Lapis?
What are you doing here, Steven?
Well, No! What are you doing here? This thing! The ocean! This is crazy! Can we talk about this? We gems are supposed to be friends.
Don't you know anything, Steven? Your friends, they don't care about the other gems. All they care about is the Earth. But I never believed in this place. I just want to go home.
I know how important home can be. That's why I'm here. You took the ocean. That's a really important part of my home.
Well, I only took the ocean because my gem is cracked. If I can just stretch it far enough, this is never gonna work.
I can fix your gem. I have healing powers.
Wait, you have healing powers?
I know, right?
Well,
Oh, sorry, this is gonna be kind of awkward.
what? Thank you, Steven.
No problem, Bob.
Lapis.
Right.
Okay. Bye.
What's up, guys? I'm Deep Cut, your YouTube. Welcome back to Cartoon Universe, and today we are going to be discussing whether or not Steven Universe could work as a live-action film. And as you can see from that little video we just made, the answer seems to be no. While I'm really amazed by what we were able to do, and I'm particularly impressed with Ranon and Alana's performances as Steven and Lapis respectively, it doesn't translate well into a live-action medium. And let's discuss why. One of the biggest problems any adaptation faces is casting. While the actors did a really great job in this short, they had the benefit of being some of the more human-looking characters. Lapis, despite being one of the gems, is actually one of the most human-looking characters on the show, so it's really easy to see someone like Alana playing her in an entire feature-length film. Steven, on the other hand, is a little bit more difficult. While Ranon did an amazing job portraying the character, Steven is actually supposed to be a 14-year-old who kind of looks like an 8-year-old and really has the personality of an even younger child a lot of the time. It's hard not just to cast someone who looks right, but is also going to capture that personality. For instance, would you just update his look to be a teenager but maintaining that personality? It's really hard to think of how Steven would translate into a live-action character in a way that all of the fans are going to be happy about. And Steven isn't the only character that we would have trouble with. The majority of the humans in the show actually look a lot more aliens than a lot of the aliens on the show do. In adaptions of comic books and anime, they have the benefit of coming from a medium that has a very strict idea of what humans look like. Obviously there's variation in all the character designs and models, but they're all similar enough that we accept them as human, and they're also serious looking. Steven Universe is drawn in a very cartoony style, particular for its townies or its human characters. They look intentionally weird and funny in order to bring out more comedic effect. Imagine trying to take Lars or Sadie and casting actors as them. Even just their looks would be difficult, let alone their personalities. And then of course there are the crystal gems themselves. Amethyst, Pearl, and Garnet have the benefit of looking more human than a lot of the other characters, but that isn't saying much. Garnet's kind of modeled after Estelle, and Amethyst and Pearl have body types that are simple enough that you could cast simply, you know, a chubby or curvy woman for Amethyst and a tall, slender woman for Pearl. But that's really where our luck ends. You know, their costumes aren't the only thing they have with them. It's their strange designs that give them this alien look. And we might get away with it for the main characters, but it would be really hard to capture that as well as their personalities. If you look at a lot of cosplay out there, it's impressive, but not necessarily something we'd want to see in a full live-action movie. And that's just our main characters. Fusions, Homeworld Gems, and even Lion would all need some level of computer-generated imagery in order to make them work on the screen. Let's take a look at the Famethyst, for example. Amethyst soldiers are supposed to be huge, and while you can get very tall women, it's also going to be hard to find women who are big and almost muscular looking. Who would you actually cast in the role of Jasper? It'd be very difficult, and it would require some level of visual effects, usually blowing them up. Even Rose herself was described as being 8 feet tall. And if we made changes to make them more human-sized and human-shaped, I think a lot of people would have a problem with that. Now, if we could find someone who actually had the look and vibe to play Jasper, we would be able to enlarge them in post-production to make them look much larger. This is difficult, as it means every single shot that they're interacting with another character, or even where you can see a good idea of the background, is going to require that visual effects, and it makes it more difficult for character interactions. However, those sort of effects wouldn't work on the fusions. The fusions aren't just huge, they have multiple arms and legs and eyes and mouth and so many other things that make them impossible to convey with just an actor. Even with good prosthetics and makeup, getting someone to really look like Alexandrite or Malachite is going to be impossible, and those are going to have to be animated entirely in 3D. 3D itself comes with a lot of issues. It's a pretty good shorthand for big studio productions these days, but they also cost a lot of money. And money is really what's going to be the biggest problem for a live-action Steven Universe film. When we look at previous adaptations such as Avatar: The Last Airbender, it was an immensely popular show and it seemed like a blockbuster hit in the making. However, the movie really flopped both financially and critically. Avatar: The Last Airbender had a budget of $150 million, and it went on to make $300 million at the box office. This means it made double its budget despite doing so poorly critically, but was still also considered a financial flop, which is why we haven't seen any sequels. You see, even when a movie does poorly critically, if it makes a lot of money, they tend to keep producing sequels. I mean, just look at the entire DC universe right now. But even though it doubled its budget, that wasn't enough for the studio. These sorts of films are expected to make at least 3 times their budget back, otherwise they're just considered too much effort and energy. Now, Steven Universe would need a much bigger budget than the Avatar. While there were a lot of visual effects and some 3D imagery, Steven Universe would require quite a bit more in order to maintain the look of the show. If you look at an adaptation like The Avengers, any of the major crossover films, they tend to have a budget of $300 million itself, and tend to make close, if not more than, $1 billion when they hit the theaters. Steven Universe, if you look at how much CGI we would need, seems a lot closer to an Avengers budget than to an Avatar: The Last Airbender budget. There's just so many characters and fusions and everything that would need 3D animation to make this work, and it's not going to cut it at $150 million. The question is, could Steven Universe, with a budget of $300 million, make enough money to be considered worth it to a studio? Steven Universe likely would bomb at the box office comparatively. Avatar: The Last Airbender was getting 6 million views at its peak of popularity. It was a name that everyone in America was aware of, whereas Steven Universe, very popular with its fan base, but not nearly as popular as Avatar: The Last Airbender was. With 6 million views on TV, it was able to get $300 million at the box office. Steven Universe, by comparison, barely ever made more than 2 million views an episode at its highest point. So to think that they could not only meet $300 million at the box office, but do better, it's a bit of a stretch. Then there comes the issue of a very critical fan base. Avatar: The Last Airbender had a lot of very diverse characters on the show, and when it got turned into a big studio movie, they whitewashed a lot of the characters, and that upset a lot of people, and I understand why. Steven Universe has an entirely different problem though, where even if they try to be as diverse as possible, they could still end up alienating a lot of the viewer base. While certain characters, such as Garnet, are very clearly modeled after a specific race, other characters do not have that. A lot of people interpret Amethyst, for instance, as different ethnicities. Some people see her as Latina, some people see her as Asian, some see her as Middle Eastern. And that's completely fine. Everyone's welcome to interpret the characters in their own way. The problem is, if the studio casts someone, regardless of which race they cast, a lot of people might feel alienated, thinking that they didn't get the race quite right with them. For people who don't think this is a serious issue, you should take a look at a lot of the cosplay comment sections. While this doesn't make up the majority of the fan base, there is always backlash when someone cosplays as a character from Steven Universe, even if their ethnicity is ambiguous, because people don't believe that person should be playing a person of color, such as Amethyst. There's no confirmation on what Rebecca Sugar really had in mind for these characters. They are technically aliens after all, but as we can see with Garnet, there did seem to be some idea of what race these characters represented. But without having a for sure answer from the creators, no matter who they cast, whether Asian, white, black, Middle Eastern, Latina, there is going to be some backlash, and that would make it practically untouchable to a studio in this day and age where casting and race are taken very seriously. And those are just a few of the very many issues that a Steven Universe live-action film would face. And it's because of that, I don't think we're going to get one anytime soon, if ever, and maybe that's a good thing.